Emotional scripts in manipulative narratives. Our brains are wired with emotional scripts, instinctual responses inherited from our ancestors that prioritize survival, belonging, and reproduction. These scripts, rooted in primal instincts like fear of loss, scarcity, social rejection, or danger, can override logic when triggered. Manipulated narratives exploit these instincts to provoke knee-jerk reactions, bypassing critical thinking and driving compliance or panic. How emotional scripts are weaponized. Fear of scarcity, stories about food shortages, water crises, or limited medicine tap into survival instincts, prompting behaviors like panic buying. For example, a media report claiming supermarkets will run out of food next week can trigger hoarding even if supply chains are stable. Tribal rejection. Narratives that frame non-compliance as selfish or socially unacceptable exploit our fear of being outcast. For instance, messaging like, "You're endangering others if you don't follow these rules," pressures individuals to conform to avoid being labeled as immoral or irresponsible. Protecting offspring. Appeals to the safety of future generations like, "Our children will suffer if we don't act," activate deep-seated instincts to protect family, creating urgency and emotional buy-in without requiring evidence. Imagine a politician declaring, "If we don't act now, our children will have no future." This statement taps directly into the ancestral script of protecting offspring, evoking visceral fear and urgency. It implies catastrophic consequences, climate collapse, societal ruin, or economic despair, without providing specific data or a clear plan. The vagueness amplifies the emotional impact, as your brain fills in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. This overrides logic, pushing you to support the politician's agenda to feel like a responsible parent or citizen, even if the claim lacks substance or alternative solutions exist. Emotional scripts bypass the rational mind because they're hardwired for survival. In ancestral times, hesitating during a famine or ignoring a tribal warning could mean death. Today, manipulators exploit this wiring to create urgency or compliance. A single headline or speech can trigger panic or social pressure, drowning out reasoned analysis. How to break the script. Focus on facts. Ask, what's the actual likelihood of this scenario? Verify claims with data from primary sources like government reports or raw statistics, rather than relying on emotionally charged narratives. Compare sources. Cross-reference the story with independent outlets or real people's account to identify discrepancies or exaggerated claims. Diverse perspectives reveal whether the narrative holds up. Pause the urgency. Emotional scripts thrive on immediacy. Take a moment to step back and assess whether the situation demands instant action or if it's being framed to provoke. Question the framing. If a narrative implies you're selfish or endangering others for questioning it, recognize this as a tribal rejection tactic. Legitimate issues don't require shaming to gain support. Follow the intent. Investigate who benefits from the emotional trigger. Does the politician's vague warning push a specific policy or funding that serves their allies? In the politician's example, digging into the claim might reveal that no future refers to a contested climate model with multiple interpretations, or the proposed action funnels public funds to corporate interests. Checking primary data, for example climate studies or budget proposals, or discussions online will expose alternative solutions or less alarmist timelines, allowing you to respond rationally rather than react emotionally. There is always a beneficiary. Every narrative has a trail of beneficiaries, and identifying who profits reveals the true motives behind it. Whether it's a media campaign, policy push, or charitable cause, following the money, through funding sources, sponsorships, or political connections, exposes whether the stated goals align with reality or serve hidden agendas. How to follow the money. Trace funding sources. Investigate who's bankrolling the narrative. Look for corporate sponsors, grants, or political donors tied to the campaign or organization. Check public records. Tools like opensecrets.org, followthemoney.org, or public financial disclosures, for example IRS Form 990 for nonprofits, reveal who's funding what. Identify profiting industries. For policies or campaigns, pinpoint which sectors, like pharmaceuticals, tech, or energy, stand to gain the most from widespread adoption or compliance. Scrutinize alliances. Look for partnerships or lobbying efforts that connect the narrative to specific interest groups or policymakers. Money leaves a paper trail that's harder to hide than rhetoric. A narrative might claim to serve the public good, but the beneficiaries often reveal whether it's driven by altruism or self-interest. Following the money cuts through emotional or moral manipulation, grounding your understanding in concrete evidence. It empowers you to question narratives, prioritize transparency, and support causes that align with the public's interests, not just those of the highest bidder. Archetypes. Our brains are wired to respond to archetypes, universal character roles like heroes, villains, victims, or saviors, that simplify complex stories into emotionally compelling narratives. Psy-Ops exploit these archetypes to craft persuasive, black-and-white stories that bypass critical thinking. By portraying a leader as the ultimate savior or dissenters as dangerous enemies, manipulators create simplistic good versus evil frameworks that discourage scrutiny and nuance. In the real world, you're going to see something like a leader being repeatedly portrayed as a savior fighting something that's pure evil, and the narrative ignores their mistakes and oversimplifies the conflict to prevent a lot of scrutiny. Archetypes tap into deep-seated psychological patterns, making narratives feel instinctively true. Psy-Ops use them to glorify a hero/savior. A leader or group is framed as the sole solution to a crisis, ignoring their flaws or trade-offs. Demonize a villain. Opponents or dissenters are cast as inherently evil, silencing legitimate critique by labeling it dangerous. Simplify complex issues. Reducing conflicts to good versus evil obscures nuance, making it harder to question the narrative. Archetypes resonate because they're hardwired into our psyche, shaping myths and stories across cultures. Psy-Ops leverage this to create emotionally charged narratives that feel familiar and urgent, short-circuiting critical thought. A simplistic hero-villain story is easier to sell than a complex reality with trade-offs and gray areas. How to deconstruct archetypes. Identify the characters. Ask, who are the key players in this narrative, and what roles are they assigned? Is someone cast as a flawless hero, a victim, or an irredeemable villain? Question the roles. Challenge the archetype's fit. Does the savior leader have flaws or conflicts of interest? Are the villains truly evil, or do they have valid points? Seek nuance. Look for oversimplification. If the story feels like a comic book battle of good versus evil, it's likely hiding complexity. Check for contradictions. Examine whether the narrative ignores inconvenient facts, like the hero's mistakes or the villain's humanity. Inconsistencies often reveal manipulation. Follow the motive. Ask, who benefits from this framing? Does the hero archetype prop up a leader's power, or does vilifying dissenters silence opposition? Analyze the context. Boundary to spot manipulation. Context shapes what we perceive as acceptable, defining the boundaries of permissible behavior. Manipulative actors exploit this by shifting the context to normalize actions that would otherwise be rejected. By framing extreme measures as necessary within a specific context, like an emergency, they bypass resistance and weaponize cognitive dissonance to drive compliance. Context sets the rules for what feels reasonable. In a crisis, behaviors like surveillance, restrictions, or centralized control are always accepted as temporary necessities, even if they'd be unthinkable in normal times. Manipulators create or amplify a context, for example, fear, urgency, or moral duty, to justify extreme measures, relying on cognitive dissonance to pressure people into aligning their actions with the new norm. Disagreeing feels like rejecting safety or morality, pushing individuals to conform. Imagine a major terrorist attack disrupts critical infrastructure, banking systems go offline, hospitals lose access to records, and media reports amplify fears of ongoing threats. In response, the government introduces sweeping surveillance laws, claiming they're essential to protect citizens from future attacks. This shifts the context from peacetime privacy to a state of emergency, making invasive measures, like mass data collection or real-time monitoring, seem not only acceptable but necessary. The public, fearing chaos or further attacks, may reluctantly agree, even though such laws would have sparked outrage before the crisis. Context manipulation works because it exploits our adaptability to new norms. In emergencies, survival instincts kick in, and cognitive dissonance makes us rationalize concessions to reduce internal conflict. How to analyze the context boundary. Define the context. Ask, what's the current context and how is it being framed? Is it a crisis, a moral imperative, or a societal shift? Identify the narrative driving the acceptability of the action. Compare similar events. Look at historical or parallel events in different settings. For example, did past terrorist attacks lead to similar surveillance laws, and were they effective or proportionate? If the response feels outsized, it may signal manipulation. Spot contradictions. Check for inconsistencies in the narrative. Are the proposed measures temporary, or do they have permanent implications? Do the beneficiaries, for example, tech firms profiting from surveillance contracts, align suspiciously with the context? Question the necessity. Ask, is this action truly required by the context, or is the situation being amplified to justify it? Cross-reference claims with primary data or independent voices. Rapid compliance shifts. Every day there is a tidal wave of urgency crashing over you, demanding instant action. That's the chilling power of Psy-Ops, weaponizing emotional appeals, staged groupthink or fake consensus to drive rapid compliance. These tactics prey on your instincts, pushing you to conform before you can think. Stay sharp, slow down, and question the rush to obey. Emotional triggers, fear, guilt, or moral outrage that demand immediate action. Staged group behavior, viral trends or public displays, flags, profile pictures, buttons, stickers, creating an illusion of universal agreement. False consensus, claims that everyone supports the cause, pressuring you to join the herd. Hashtags like #HashWearMore, how to counter it, pause the panic, resist the urge to act fast. Urgency is a red flag, take time to reflect. Question. Conformity, ask why is everyone suddenly on board? Look for orchestrated momentum. Test the message. Engage skeptics online and in person to probe the narrative's cracks. Trace the agenda. Dig into who benefits and whether the push ties to a larger, hidden goal. Imagine a tragic event unfolding, urging millions to change their profile pictures to a specific symbol or adopt a trending hashtag. It feels unifying, even noble, promoted as a stand for justice or awareness. The emotional pull and apparent consensus, everyone's doing it, create a wave of compliance. But soon the symbol is revealed as a foot-in-the-door tactic, tied to a divisive political agenda or corporate campaign. By slowing down and checking for dissenting voices or researching the symbol's origins, you uncover its true purpose. Say, a lobbying group pushing controversial legislation under the guise of a feel-good cause. Rapid compliance shifts exploit your desire to belong, using urgency to bypass reason. Like a magician's sleight of hand, they distract you from the bigger picture. By pausing, questioning, and seeking truth, you can break the spell and protect your autonomy. The frames shape how media narratives guide your thoughts and actions. By dissecting the frame step by step, you can uncover hidden assumptions, distortions, and suppressed truths. This process reveals what the narrative wants from you, and whether it's manipulating reality. Key points in frame evaluation. Expectation. What are you expected to believe or do? Identify the narrative's core message or call to action. Ask, what does this story want me to believe or do? Pinpoint the intended belief or behavior, like supporting a policy or fearing a threat. Belief. What assumptions are made about your values, fears, or worldview? How does the narrative appeal to these? Ask, what does this assume about me? Does it presume you value safety over freedom or fear social rejection? Check if it exploits those assumptions. Perception. How is reality shaped? Look for selective facts, omitted context, or emotionally charged framing. Ask, how is reality being distorted? Look for cherry-picked data, missing context, or loaded language that skews the story. Definition. What truth is presented as unchallengeable? Notice if dissent is silenced or topics are avoided. Identify suppressed topics, silence critics, or discredited viewpoints. Cross-check timelines, event details, or search algorithms to spot censorship or labeling of dissenters as conspiracists. Example. A news campaign pushes a new health mandate as the only way to save lives. Expectation. You're expected to comply with the mandate and view it as essential. Belief. It assumes you prioritize collective safety and fear disease, appealing to your desire to be a responsible citizen. Perception. The narrative highlights rising cases but omits data on the mandate's efficacy or side effects, shaping a one-sided view. Definition. The truth is that the mandate is unquestionable. Critics are labeled conspiracists, alternative treatments are suppressed, and search algorithms downrank dissenting studies. Frames manipulate by setting expectations, exploiting beliefs, distorting perceptions, and enforcing unchallenged truths. If an idea requires silencing critics or suppressing information, it's likely flawed. Evaluating the frame empowers you to spot these tactics, seek alternative viewpoints, and demand transparency. Decode the timing. Why now? Timing isn't random, it's a chess move. Psy-Ops often use carefully timed events as smokescreens, distracting you from bigger truths. A flashy story breaking just as a scandal surfaces? That's no accident. Study the timing to uncover what's being hidden. Key questions to ask: why now? What makes this moment the perfect stage for this narrative? What's being overshadowed? Are major events, scandals, or reports conveniently buried? Is the timing too perfect? Does this story align suspiciously with unrelated news or political shifts? How to investigate: pinpoint the timeline. Note when the story broke and map it against other events. Look for distractions. Identify what's fading from headlines. Corruption probes, policy changes, or protests. Check for patterns. Are similar distractions recurring during sensitive moments? Dig into past examples. Follow the beneficiaries. Who gains from the public's diverted attention? Politicians, corporations, or movements? The celebrity breakup story floods the public's attention just as a sensitive report drops. Checking different sources or public records reveals the report threatens powerful figures, suggesting the celebrity drama was amplified as a deliberate distraction. By studying the timeline, you see the sleight of hand, keeping the public hooked on trivia while critical truths are buried. Understand logical fallacies. To fortify your intellectual defenses against the subtle art of manipulation, you must hone your ability to discern the flawed reasoning that underpins many persuasive tactics. By mastering the recognition of logical fallacies, you equip yourself with a formidable shield against psychological operations, crafted arguments designed to sway the unwary. Allow me to illuminate 10 such fallacies, each a deceptive thread in the tapestry of manipulation, so that your mind may learn to see the world with piercing clarity. Appeal to emotion. This tactic sidesteps reason, wielding fear, anger, or hope to stir the heart. Consider the plea: if you oppose this measure, children will languish in despair. Such emotional gambits obscure rational discourse, tugging at sympathies to bypass scrutiny. Strawman argument. Here, an opponent's position is distorted into a caricature, easily dismantled. For instance, one might claim, they resist lockdowns because they value profit over human lives, misrepresenting a nuanced stance to render it vulnerable to attack. Bandwagon fallacy. This fallacy asserts truth through popularity, as though consensus alone validates a claim. You might hear, millions endorse this policy, surely you must agree. Such reasoning mistakes the crowd's roar for the voice of reason. False dilemma. By presenting two extreme options as the sole possibilities, this fallacy erases the spectrum of alternatives. The declaration, "you are either with us or against us," forces a binary choice, stifling the exploration of middle ground. Ad hominem attack. Rather than engaging with an argument, this tactic targets the individual presenting it. Remarks like, "her views are irrelevant, she lacks a scientific degree," seek to discredit the person while evading the substance of their claims. Appeal to authority. This fallacy cloaks a claim in the mantle of an expert's endorsement, as if authority guarantees truth. Statements such as, "Dr. X endorses this, so it must be correct," demand blind trust in place of critical examination. Slippery slope. Here, a single action is cast as the first step toward catastrophic consequences. You may encounter warnings like, "if we permit this, our freedoms will vanish entirely." Such alarmist rhetoric inflates modest proposals into existential threats. Hasty generalization. This fallacy leaps from scant evidence to sweeping conclusions. For example, two politicians were dishonest, so all are corrupt, paints an entire group with the brush of isolated misdeeds, sacrificing nuance for bold assertion. Red herring. A distraction woven into the discourse, this tactic diverts attention with irrelevant issues. When someone asks, "why focus on climate change amidst rampant crime?" they introduce a tangential concern to derail the original debate. False equivalence. This fallacy equates two disparate entities, ignoring their differences. A claim like "both sides harbor extremists so they are equally culpable" flattens complex realities into a misleading symmetry, obscuring meaningful distinctions. Internalizing these fallacies is the most effective shield against Psy-Ops. You need to cultivate a discerning mind, one that perceives the architecture of persuasion with newfound clarity.